Hello and welcome to our flip video lesson, Thinking About Egypt, lesson 4.10. Our lesson details our Human Odyssey reading pages. There are actually no reading pages for this lesson, so you should have read all the previous pages, which will help you to fill in the chart and the information we have for this lesson. Student Guide Workbook pages 116 to 121. Your assessment is 4.10 in your OMS. And then about the topic, comparing ancient Egypt with ancient Mesopotamia. So what are we learning about today? Our Unit 4, Lesson 4.10 learning objectives. Analyze Egyptian art and architecture for information on the society's culture, and compare and contrast Egypt's culture and civilization to those of Mesopotamia. Lesson Introduction, Thinking About Egypt. You have studied the art and architecture of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia to learn more about those cultures. Historians study art and architecture to understand a society's values and priorities, but artifacts give clues about other aspects of culture as well. They can tell us, for example, how monuments were constructed, who did the work, and what skills they had, and what natural resources were available in a region. Egypt, geography. Egypt is almost all desert, dry, brown, red land. The annual flooding of the Nile deposits fertile soil. Egyptians grew wheat to make bread and barley to make beer. Other crops included onions, beans, lentils, dates, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and flax. They also grew papyrus along the river banks and used it to make paper. Egypt economy. The Egyptians produced a surplus of food, which they traded for goods that they did not have in Egypt. Items they imported included juniper, cedar, silver, horses, lapis lazuli, ebony, copper, cattle, gold, ivory, incense, and ostrich feathers. Surplus grain, stone for building, copper for tools, semi-precious stones for jewelry, all moved up and down the Nile. Egypt, religion and philosophy. The Egyptians worshipped many gods and goddesses. They prayed to them for good fortune and protection. The Egyptians believed that each of the kings was the god of Horus come to rule on earth. They also believed that death was not the end of everything, but the beginning of eternal life. They built pyramids as tombs for kings, queens, and other royalty as homes for the next life. They believed that people would use their body and all things that were buried with them in the afterlife. They decorated tombs with scenes of everyday life and statues of servants, because they believed that if priests said the right prayers and then the artworks would come to life and forever supply the dead person with all of his or her needs. Egypt, knowledge of arts. The Egyptians were the first people to build with stone. They raised monumental pyramids and temples that still stand along the Nile. They built the pyramids as tombs for early pharaohs. The Great Sphinx carved out of limestone is one of the largest sculptures ever created. Egyptian art and architecture had a purpose. Temples honored royal families, and the gods were decorated with paintings and statues to make certain that those who died would have a pleasant afterlife. The Egyptians made necklaces and bracelets, collars, and earrings from gold, silver, glass, and stones. The Egyptians invented a form of picture writing called hieroglyphics, whose picture symbols stood for ideas and later sounds. Hieroglyphics were carved mostly on temple walls, tombs, and monuments. Egyptian scribes used a shorthand form of hieroglyphics to keep all kinds of official records for the pharaoh, from reports about harvests to construction plans for temples. The Egyptians invented a paper-like writing material called papyrus. The key to understanding hieroglyphics was lost over the years until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which became a key for modern scholars to interpret the writing system. Very few ancient Egyptians could read or write. Only the brightest children were allowed to attend school. They would and could become scribes or obtain good jobs in the government. Priests were some of the best scribes. They were sent to the House of Life, a kind of college for priests. Egypt technology. The Egyptians invented the embalming process and one of the first irrigation systems. They based their calendar on a 365-day year. The Egyptians used mathematics to build pyramids, canals, and reservoirs. Their doctors were skilled enough to perform brain surgery. Egypt government and law. The pharaoh was the supreme ruler of ancient Egypt. Most of the rulers of ancient Egypt were men, but there were also 4 female pharaohs. The pharaoh governed for life and made sure that divine order existed throughout the kingdom. Many pharaohs led the armies in battle. Prime ministers were called viziers. They were responsible for collecting taxes, overseeing the priesthood, presiding in the courts, and carrying out other administrative duties. They appointed hundreds of other officials. Government officials also served for life. Egypt's society. The social structure in ancient Egypt was like a pyramid. At the top was the king or pharaoh. The priests who served in the temples and the scribes, educated Egyptians who kept the accounts of the country's finances, were next in line. The craftsmen who built temples, decorated tombs, and carved statues of the gods were next. And the majority of the people, most of whom made a living at farming, were at the bottom of the social pyramid. Women had legal rights. They could own property and work outside the home. Egypt history. The three most important periods of history in ancient Egypt were the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. Before the Old Kingdom, Egypt was divided into two kingdoms, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. Narmer, the king of Upper Egypt, conquered Lower Egypt and united the two kingdoms, establishing the first dynasty. The Old Kingdom had a strong central government. During this period, Khufu's Great Pyramid and other pyramids at Giza were built. During the Middle Kingdom, Egyptians greatly expanded their reach. They conquered territory to the south and traded with lands as distant as Syria. The New Kingdom is often referred to as Egypt's Golden Age because it was a period of great prosperity, great art, and great kings. Two important pharaohs reigned during this time, Tutankhamun and Ramses II. Also during this time, a powerful female ruler, Hatshepsut, successfully ruled Egypt, not as queen but as king. The pharaoh Akhenaten abolished the worship of many gods and declared that there was only one god, Aten, a sun god. Akhenaten moved the capital of Thebes to a new location in the desert at Akhenaten. Tutankhamun, who ruled after Akhenaten's death, re-established the traditional religion with its many gods, and he brought the capital back to Thebes. The New Kingdom came to an end around 1070 BC, when a weakened Egypt became prey to its neighbors. The kingdom suffered invasion and rule by a series of foreign dynasties. So now I'd like you to turn to page 118 in your student guide, and you'll see there's a chart there called Comparing Cultures. This is where you're going to compare Sumer, ancient Mesopotamia, with Egypt, ancient Egypt. And you can pause this video to fill in your chart, or you can fill it in on your own and come back to the video to check your answers. So here's the first section, and then the second, and then the third. And again, just to recap, there are no reading pages for today's lesson. Important vocabulary words to understand: surplus, more than what is needed or used, excess; inhabited, a person settling in or occupying a place or environment; analyze, examine methodically and in detail; and culture, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. And here we come to our quote section. The scholar seeks, the artist finds. Thank you for joining me today. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Have a great day.